One of my favorite rappers of all time is 2Pac. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you probably know that. I'm sure I don't have to tell you how outspoken, prolific, passionate, and talented of an artist he was. Towards the end of his career, and unfortunately his life, he dissed a whole lot of people. On one song in particular, he went especially hard. That being the track Against All Odds from the Don Illuminati, the 7-Day Theory album, which was released on November 5th, 1996, roughly 2 months after his murder. It's considered by many to be one of his best albums, and he worked on it in the thick of his beef with New York street guys like Jacquees Agnant, aka Haitian Jack, and Jimmy Roseman, aka Jimmy Henchman, and rappers like Nas, Diddy, and Biggie, among others. The album also features Bomb First, on which he sends several shots at rappers like Mobb Deep and Jay-Z, and Toss It Up, on which he disses Dr. Dre, who at that point had recently left Death Row Records. Before I continue, remember to click that thumbs up button to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, and check the links in the description to follow on other platforms. Let me just make it pretty clear before we dive right in. These aren't really rap beefs, at least not all of them, as some of these people Pac had issues with were considered real problems in the streets. For example, Haitian Jack was known as a stick-up kid, and Jimmy Henchman was known for being in the drug game. Now let's get to the major incidents that caused the schisms in his friendships. In November 1993, 2Pac was charged with sodomy of a woman in his hotel room. That woman was Ayanna Jackson, who claimed that 2Pac, Haitian Jack, who was also known as Nigel, and 2 other men forced her to perform oral sex on them. This is where Haitian Jack comes into play. His trial wound up being separated from Pac's, and he didn't have to do any jail time for it, while Pac wound up being sentenced to prison and had a $3 million bond which he was unable to pay. Pac was convicted of first-degree sexual abuse for forcibly touching her butt and was sentenced to 18 months to 4.5 years, which is honestly a pretty heavy sentence for what was ultimately a false accusation, and I feel like other things were at play with that situation. This is where Suge Knight came in, getting Pac out on bond in return for Pac signing to Death Row Records, which the events afterwards led to Pac's untimely demise. Ayanna had an interview on Vlad TV in 2018 where they went into a detailed account of her version of what happened that day. It was pretty obvious she had a sketchy recollection of the situation, to say the least. She did admit, however, that it wasn't 2Pac that assaulted her and that it was the men that were with Pac. The other men in the hotel suite were Jack, Trevor, and Charles Fuller, who was 2Pac's road manager. Pac addressed the situation on the third verse of the song Holla At Me from the All Eyes On Me album released in February 1996 with the lines,
"So many brothers framed in this dirty game. It's the same, so much pressure on my brain while she blame me. Secrets in the dark, only her and I know. Now I'm sitting in the state pen doing time slow, cause she made a bad decision that got me living just like an animal. I'm caged up in state prison."
The lyrics speak for themselves, a false accusation, the thing that many men unfortunately fall victim to in our justice system, and in this case, the thing that wound up leading to his murder. The other important incident here is the infamous 1994 Quad Studios shooting, which occurred on November 30th, roughly 1 year after the previous incident. This is where Jimmy Henchman comes into play. He reportedly offered Pac money to come to the studio and record a verse for the rapper Lil Sean. This is also where tension came between Pac and Bad Boy Records, as Diddy, Biggie, Andre Harrell, Lil C's from Junior Mafia, and others were also at the studio, and Pac believed they should have essentially done more to help him out, considering it happened right in the lobby and seemed to be an obvious setup. This was also the catalyst for Pac's beef with the rapper Stretch, who was a friend of his and had worked with him on several songs, for example the song Pain from the Above the Rim soundtrack, one of my favorite Pac songs and favorite songs in general. It's fair to say that these two events really changed the course of Pac's life when you look back at it. If you've seen my video about Hit 'Em Up, which is his most well-known diss track, then you might remember me mentioning Against All Odds and how it's one of my favorite diss tracks of all time. This song plays quite a role in really seeing how things played out, because a lot of things over the years have come to light about the people he mentioned here. On the second verse, Pac calls out Haitian Jack with the lines,
I heard he was light-skinned, stocky, with a Haitian accent. Jewelry, fast cars, and he's known for flashing. Listen while I take you back and lace this rap. A real live tale about a snitch named Haitian Jack. Knew he was working for the Fed. Same crime, different trials. Nigga, picture what he said.
During the lines, you can hear 2Pac ad-libs in the background saying things like, say his name. To me, this is especially notable, as how often can you say in rap songs, especially ones by rappers of this magnitude, were they really mentioning street guys by name? The biggest song besides this one that comes to mind is Ghetto Quran by 50 Cent, and that was released in 1999, a few years after this song. He follows that up with the lines, and did I mention promise to pay back Jimmy Henchman in due time? I know you bitch niggas is listening, the world is mine. Set me up, wet me up, nigga stuck me up. Heard the guns bust, but you tricks never shut me up. Touch one of mine, on everything I own, I will destroy everything you touch. Play the game, nigga, all out warfare, eye for eye. Last words to a bitch, nigga, why you lie? Now you gotta watch your back, now watch your front. Here we come, gunshots a tut, now you stuck. Jimmy Henchman is another New York street guy who Pac thought to be behind the situation, and Tut is someone who is believed by some to be the gunman in the Quad Studio robbery that was sent by Jimmy. In the third verse, he goes on to mention Diddy again and make a reference to Stretch, who was with him when he got shot at Quad Studios. So now we have a better idea on who the people are that Pac really considered enemies. Let's start off with Stretch. Stretch was a rapper and producer from Queens and member of the rap group, The Live Squad, along with his brother Majesty and DJ K-Lo. They met in 1991, and Stretch was featured on 2Pac's debut album, 2Pacalypse Now, released in November that year. Stretch appeared on the tracks Crooked Ass Nigga and The Lunatic. He was also featured on Digital Underground's second album, Sons of the P, released in October 1991, on the song Family of the Underground, along with Stretch from Naughty by Nature. He also featured on 2Pac's second album, Strictly for My Niggas, released in February 1993 on the tracks Struggling and 5 Deadly Venoms, as well as producing the tracks Holla If You Hear Me and The Streets Are Death Row. Stretch then joined Pac's group Thug Life and was featured on their debut and only album Thug Life Volume 1, released in September 1994. The two were pretty close, but with the Quad Studio shooting, this changed their relationship just as it did with several others. Part of the reason Pac felt like Stretch was involved in setting him up is because, according to Pac, the robbers went straight for him rather than going after Stretch, who was the biggest guy out of the group. Also, another thing that was a bit odd about the situation was that apparently Stretch came to 2Pac after the shooting with a warning from Jimmy Henchman himself. So the question in that case would be, why are you as my good friend bringing a message from someone who got me robbed and shot?
You know, I was there when he brought the message from Jimmy Henchman. You know what I mean? I was there when he said, Jimmy Henchman said, you don't got your money right, you don't want to go to war. You know what I mean? Certain incidents that Pac felt hurtful. And so it was deeper than, it definitely was from pain. Like that was hurtful for Pac.
As far as his fate, however, Randy Stretch Walker was killed in a drive-by shooting on November 30th, 1995, the one-year anniversary of the Quad Studio shooting. Many would say that this was payback for the 2Pac shooting. Also, before his death, Stretch had started working with Nas, which likely didn't sit well with Pac either. He worked with Nas on his second album, It Was Written, as the Live Squad is listed as producers on the tracks Taken in Blood and Silent Murder. The album was released in July 1996, about 8 months after his murder. Pac addressed Stretch, allegedly helping set him up on the first verse of the song Holla At Me, just like he talked about Ayana on third verse. Also, he had an interview with The Source magazine in which he was asked about his beef with Stretch. Pac had the following to say: Stretch was my closest dog, my closest homie. I did a lot of drama. I got into a lot of cases and shit because of Stretch. Money-wise, he could have had anything. His daughter was my daughter. Whatever she wanted, she could have. Then this shit happened and a nigga didn't ride for me. He didn't do what your dog is supposed to do when you shot up. When I was in jail, nigga never wrote me, never got at me. His homeboys was coming to see me and he wasn't coming to see me. And he started hanging around Biggie right after this. I'm in jail, shot up, his main dog, and he hanging out going to shows with Biggie. Both these niggas never came to see me. He also stated that he didn't talk to Stretch before he died. On the song Ambitions as a Rider, the first song on All Eyes on Me, as well as the first song that Pac recorded when he got out of prison, he also apparently makes a reference to Stretch with the lines,
Blast me, but they didn't finish. Didn't diminish my power, so now I'm back to be a motherfucking minute. They cowards, that's why they trying to set me up. Have bitch ass niggas on my team, so indeed they wet me up.
While Pac is rapping the lines, you can hear someone making gunshot sounds in the background 5 times, which makes it clear that this is a reference for the Quad Studio shooting. The person on his team is almost certainly Stretch given their closeness before this incident, as well as the fact that Stretch was with him during the shooting. I understand his suspicions. If you're with multiple people and you're the only one that gets robbed, it's reasonable to think that something was up. Especially given as when 2Pac had an interview about how the incident occurred, he mentioned that the guys were in the lobby already, as if they were waiting for him and knew that he was going to be coming. It simply wasn't a random robbery. He also made a reference to Stretch on Against All Odds with the lines,
And that nigga that was down for me, rested dead. Switch sides, guess his new friends wanted him dead.
Here 2Pac is claiming Stretch might have been killed by the same people he allegedly switched sides to. On top of that, allegedly Stretch had made a pass at Desiree Smith while Pac was locked up, Desiree being a woman that Pac was involved with at the time. Pac seems to confirm this on the song Just Like Daddy from the 7 Day Theory album with the lines,
I see you daily. When my fake homies try to fuck you, you run and tell me. That's why I stay committed.
Years later, on the song A Queen Story from Nas's album Life is Good, released in July 2012, Nas raps about queens, as you could probably tell from the title. On the first verse, he has the lines, fucking with Stretch from Live Squad, I could have died the same night that Stretch died. I just got out of his ride. He dropped me off and drove to Springfield. November 30th, another Queens King killed. This is a big what if in rap. What if the shooting happened before Nas got out of the car with Stretch? What if the shooting never even happened? Would 2Pac and Stretch make amends? Nas also mentioned 2Pac and Stretch years later on the song Death Row East from his album King's Disease 2, released in August 2021. He ends the second verse with the lines,
there's a rumor that spread I like to address. Pac was never set up by Stretch, let it rest. I stepped to him at Bryant Park so we could speak direct. He didn't disrespect, we plan to reconnect.
Making it quite clear that Stretch had nothing to do with setting up Pac, though it isn't something we can necessarily confirm. Stretch's brother Majesty has had interviews over the years talking about how he and his brother were both friends of Pac and also refutes the claims against his brother. Now let's get to that snitch named Haitian Jack, as 2Pac claimed.
I heard he was light-skinned, stocky, with a Haitian accent. Jewelry, fast cars, and he's known for flashing. Listen while I take you back and lace this rap. A real live tale about a snitch named Haitian Jack.
Jacquees Agnant, aka Haitian Jack, came from a Haitian family that migrated to New York. Like I mentioned earlier, he met 2Pac in 1993 when Above the Rim was being filmed, which also happens to be one of my favorite movies. According to Jack, 2Pac studied him for his character Birdie. If you haven't seen it, Birdie is the leader of a gang of drug dealers and basically the villain of the film. Through Jack, Pac also met James Rosemond, aka Jimmy Henchman, another Haitian individual which I will be getting to shortly. In November 1993, the sexual assault happens in the hotel room, and then in November 1994, the Quad Studio shooting happens. During this time frame, they're fighting in court, and Haitian Jack winds up with his case separated and pleads guilty to a misdemeanor and serves no time. Like the sexual assault case, Pac also accused Jack of being behind the Quad Studio shooting. Some sources even say that Ayana was actually introduced to Pac by Jack, which if that is definitely the case, it gives even more credence to Pac's claim that it was a setup by Jack. Either way, Jack over the years has denied being behind either of these situations. Like I said with Stretch, I can understand. It all looks more than a bit suspicious. Years later in interviews, people that were also around Jack, like Mike Tyson, who was also from Brooklyn, stated that he warned Pac about Haitian Jack.
There's a rumor that you told Pac not to hang out with Haitian Jack, but he didn't listen.
Well, I told Pac, but I said, I don't know if I think you're out of your league right now. You know?
Mm-hmm.
He had asked me about Jack. You know, and I had known Jack through Scooter. And I used to say, you're out of your league.
Lil C's from Junior Mafia stated that Biggie had warned Pac about the people he was around as well.
Yo, is it true that Biggie warned 2Pac about, you know, hanging out with certain people before the Quad Studios incident?
Yeah, not like Warren. It's nothing to Warren. He was out there already doing stuff and shooting films, but Big was just telling him like, New York is a little different from Cali. Just be on, just be on point about your surroundings, and people that may be around. We was only around 2Pac when we was around him. Sometime other people may come around. We'll peel off. Or Big will be like, yo, nah, handle your business with your peoples. And when you finish or tomorrow, hit me up. We'll come get up with you type of thing.
Another thing that seemed to drive a wedge between the two was a woman, as it often is the case. Both 2Pac and Jack had a relationship with Madonna at some point. According to a letter Pac wrote, he ended things with Madonna because he was concerned about how it would look if he was with a white woman, basically. In an interview years later, however, Jack stated that Madonna left Pac because she knew that Pac wasn't the street guy that he portrayed himself to be, and that Pac basically copied him. After the murder of 2Pac, he continued on in the music industry, being a manager for people like fellow Haitian Wyclef Jean, among others. Then in 2004, Jack was involved in a shooting in an LA club, which wound up with him serving time. Then in 2007, he wound up getting deported to Haiti, as like I mentioned earlier, he was not born in the US and his family migrated from Haiti. He eventually wound up moving to the Dominican Republic. In 2021, he was featured on the documentary Hip Hop Uncovered and was asked about things like the Quad Studio shooting and being mentioned on Against All Odds. So yeah, as I said, Jack has been staying in the DR. However, who knows how long until he'll be able to come back to the US, if he's ever allowed. And also you could say he has a stain on his reputation, due to being immortalized as one of the people who was dissed by one of the greatest rappers of all time and labeled as a snitch who works with the feds. Now we're going to get into one of the other street guys that Pac named in that track, a friend of Jack. James Rosemond, aka Jimmy Henchman, like Jack, is Haitian. However, he was born in Brooklyn, unlike Jack, who was born in Haiti. He was also a street guy who got into the music industry managing artists and met Pac through Jack. Jimmy was the one that asked Pac to come to Quad Studios to record for his artist Little Sean. According to various sources, there was some money owed between Jimmy and Pac started yelling at Jimmy over the phone about the situation, and the recording of a verse for Little Sean was basically a cover-up to set Pac to get robbed as a way to teach him a lesson. Allegedly, Jimmy had been extorting New York rappers including Puff, and Pac had refused to pay up, leading to the whole situation. On Against All Odds, Pac has the lines,
Puffy getting robbed like a bitch. To hide that fact, he did some shit he shouldn't have did, so we riding for that.
Which, looking at the lines under the context of him being extorted by Jimmy and being at Quad Studios also when the shooting happened, it does appear to come together. Some sources say that the reason Puffy and Biggie and the rest of their crew didn't say anything to Pac was out of fear of Jimmy Henchman. In an interview with Vibe magazine, Pac refers to Jimmy Henchman as Booker, and he states that when he saw Booker after he had gotten shot, Booker had a surprised look on his face. This would make sense, as Henchman allegedly only planned for Pac to be robbed, not shot. Jimmy was also known for being the game's manager during his beef with G-Unit, and this part in particular is very important as it helps lay the groundwork for what happened to Jimmy after his whole beef with 2Pac. In 2007, Tony Yayo and Lowell Fletcher, aka Lodi Mack, saw Jimmy Henchman's teenage son, so Lodi Mack pulled out his gun and Yayo smacked his son, which led to the 2009 murder of Lodi Mack in retaliation, along with Tony Yayo's mother's house being shot up. Then in 2010, Jimmy was arrested on charges of cocaine trafficking, money laundering, and witness tampering. He wound up being convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. Also, he was convicted for crimes related to the murder of Lodi Mack as well, which basically meant he was screwed pretty much either way. Also in 2011, he made a statement that Dexter Isaac, a man who was behind bars for other crimes, was an informant. Dexter then released a statement from prison stating that he was the shooter in the 1994 shooting of 2Pac at Quad Studios and that he was hired by Jimmy Henchman. Dexter claimed several other things as well. For example, that he and Jimmy were friends since they were young, and that he was paid $2,500 to rob 2Pac and got to keep whatever jewelry he got from him minus one ring that Jimmy wanted. He also claimed to have been friends with Biggie, that Haitian Jack had nothing to do with the robbery, and that Puff knew about Jimmy setting Pac up to get robbed. So yeah, another enemy of Tupac got his payback in a way. Dexter's identity might not have been known to Pac, as the rumor back then was that it was another person, Walter Johnson, aka King Tut, that was behind the shooting, and Pac addressed him as well in Against All Odds. But both Dexter and Walter wound up getting sentenced to life in prison for different situations. Before we get to the one that you're all probably waiting for, a man who has been trending for the majority of 2024 for some particularly poor behavior, I'm going to run through other people that Pac named as enemies around that time. Although some of these situations were more so misunderstandings than anything else, we're going to go through most of them real quick anyways. First off, Mobb Deep. In 1995, while Pac was in prison, Mobb Deep released their second album, The Infamous, a classic album and one of my favorite rap albums of all time. On the song Survival of the Fittest, which was released as the second single from the album, Havoc mentions Thug Life on the chorus. Apparently, Pac took this as a diss, as Thug Life was his thing. Remember, Tupac even had the word Thug Life tattooed on his chest. Also, as I mentioned before, he released the Thug Life Volume 1 album in 1994. That mention of Thug Life is what led to Tupac mentioning them on Hit 'Em Up. Also on the track First to Bomb by Tupac and the Outlaws, Napoleon also sends a shot at Mobb Deep. Pac also dissed Mobb Deep along with the Fugees on the track When We Ride on Our Enemies. Mobb Deep responded to Hit 'Em Up on the song Drop a Gem on 'Em, which was released in August 1996, shortly before Pac was murdered. They pulled it from the radio after his murder, but it was still featured on their album Hell on Earth, released in November that year. They continued on putting out music until Prodigy passed on June 18, 2017 from accidental choking while he was in a hospital in Las Vegas due to his sickle cell anemia, and Havoc has continued to work with other artists. Mobb Deep weren't the only rappers from Queens that Pac dissed though. He also sent shots at Nas like I mentioned earlier. Pac dissed Nas because he thought Nas was dissing him on the song The Message from his second album, It Was Written, which was released in July 1996. He dissed Nas on a few tracks, including Against All Odds and the intro of Bomb First from the 7 Day Theory album, which was recorded just a few weeks after the release of It Was Written. Unlike most of the other people discussed here, Pac and Nas did actually make amends, however, before he died. They met up in Central Park on September 4th, 1996, the night of the MTV Music Awards, and squashed their beef, basically chalking it up to a misunderstanding. He told Nas that they're cool, but there is going to be a track coming out soon that is dissing him. That track would be Against All Odds, as at that time, the album was already finished and most likely copies were being pressed or getting ready to be. Years later, in July 2021, a track titled Real Niggas was leaked online, which featured Nas taking shots at Tupac. Up next, we have Chino XL, who Pac also mentioned on the outro of Hit 'Em Up.
And if you want to be down with Bad Boy, then fuck you too. Chino XL, fuck you too. All you motherfuckers, fuck you too.
That mention was a response to Chino XL mentioning him on the song Riot featuring Razkaz, which was on his debut album Here to Save You All, released in April 1996. On that song, Chino XL has the line, "By this industry, I'm trying not to get fucked like Tupac in jail," which of course is a reference to the rumor that Tupac was raped when he was locked up. Chino XL then responded to Pac on a radio freestyle he did. Years later, Chino XL stated that he ran into Tupac at Venice Beach and they had a conversation about the situation and squashed things. Chino XL then passed on July 28, 2024 from apparent suicide. Next up, we're going to go real brief through his beef with the notorious B.I.G. The Quad Studio shooting happens and Biggie among others were present in the building at the time. As I said earlier, Pac felt like they should have been more helpful in finding out what's going on or warning him about the setup if it was truly a setup. Then Biggie released the song Who Shot Ya while Pac was locked up, and some people, including Pac, took that as a diss to him. However, that was just a matter of timing as the song was recorded before Pac was shot but wasn't released until afterwards. Also, Biggie is another one of those people, like Mike Tyson, that warned Pac about Haitian Jack. Tupac didn't heed Biggie's warning, however, and allegedly he even went back to Jack and told him what Biggie said. Like I said, the two weren't really enemies, but since they did have a falling out, I am including him here. Pac and the Outlaws dissed Biggie on Hit 'Em Up, Against All Odds, Bomb First, and other songs. As to his fate, As everyone knows, he was shot and killed on March 9th, 1997 in LA, California, almost 6 months after Pac's murder in September 1996. 2Pac also took issue with then up-and-coming rapper Jay-Z. As I mentioned earlier, 2Pac dissed Jay-Z on Bomb First. Pac likely dissed Jay because of Jay's closeness to Biggie, as in June 1996, Jay released his debut album Reasonable Doubt, which features the song Brooklyn's Finest featuring Biggie. Also on that same album is the track 22 Twos, on which Jay starts his first verse with the lines,
"Too much West Coast dick licking, and too many niggas on a mission, doing your best JC rendition,"
which Pac probably heard and might have taken as an insult. According to DJ Clark Kent, Jay had a diss track in response to Pac, but it was never released because Pac was murdered. He stated that Jay did perform the song one time, however. Another rapper that Pac had beef with was LL Cool J. In November 1995, LL Cool J released his 6th album, Mr. Smith, which features the song I Shot Ya. Just like with Who Shot Ya, this made Pac feel a certain kind of way. To me, I get it. It could be seen as a subliminal shot, no pun intended. Who Shot Ya was released in February 1995, about 3 months after Pac got shot. Then LL Cool J released I Shot Ya almost a year after his shooting. Then a remix to the song was released featuring Keith Murray, Prodigy, Fat Joe, and Foxy Brown. That also might have played a part on Pac dissing Prodigy. On top of that, Pac dated LL Cool J's ex-girlfriend, Kadada Jones. Pac also dissed LL Cool J on the original version of the outro of his song Lil Homies. However, it was clear that before this, Pac didn't really have any issues with LL, as he even mentions him in the song Old School from his Me Against the World album released in March 1995. Also, LL mentioned 2Pac on the self-titled single from his 7th album, Phenomenon, which was released in October 1997. Another person that Pac had on his list of enemies was Andre Harrell, the founder of Uptown Records. Andre had a connection to Puff because Puff worked at Uptown Records as an intern in the early 90s before founding Bad Boy Records, and Andre was also at Quad Studios when the shooting occurred, as he was with Puff and Jimmy. Apparently, Andre knew Pac was heading to the studio and had planned to talk to Pac about getting him on the show he was producing at the time, called New York Undercover. Andre Harrell died in May 2020 at the age of 59 due to heart failure. To wrap this up, let's get to the man of the year, the other one that was in the studio with Jimmy and Andre. Sean Combs, aka Diddy, Puffy, Puff, Brother Love, and whatever other nickname he has gone by over the years is one of the biggest enemies that 2Pac has had, at least in terms of his fame and wealth. So it comes to a bit of a surprise to many people that he's in a lot of hot water over all these allegations that he currently is facing at the time of writing this. I, being born in New York City and raised in the NYC metropolitan area, heard Diddy all over the radio throughout my childhood and never would have expected these things to occur. I always knew him for being the guy dancing in the videos and for being maybe a bit of a shady businessman, according to former artists of his like the Lox and Mace. He was allegedly involved in the Quad Studio shooting, as he was in the studio with Jimmy and Andre Harrell, and they had talked about the plan to rob Pac. 2Pac is one of the very first public figures to ever mention Diddy in a negative light like this, but this wasn't even the first violent situation Diddy found himself involved in. The first public example was in December 1991, the infamous City College stampede, which happened at City College in Manhattan. At a charity basketball game held there that was hosted by Diddy and Heavy D, the venue was overcrowded, and as a result, 9 people were killed in the middle of the crowd rush. Granted, he wasn't the culprit of the violence, it was still associated with him as he was a host, but that was just the first of the numerous negative things that would be attached to his name over the years. In addition to the lines I mentioned earlier from Against All Odds, Pac also has the lines,
Let's be honest, you a punk or you would see me with gloves. Remember that shit you said to vibe about me being a thug? And you can tell the people you roll with whatever you want, but you and I know what's going on.
These lines are in reference to an interview Diddy had with Vibe magazine in 1995, in which he responded to an interview 2Pac had. He had an interview in the Clinton Correctional Facility, which he spoke on Thug Life and mentioned that it was dead to him now.
I don't see it as me having this gangster thug image. Thug Life would be more accurate, but it's not an image, it's just a way of life, it's a mentality. Yes, I have taken the time to reflect on it. And my reflection, I don't see it as being wrong, I just see it as being a stage that we all go through. You know, it's just like that. For little white kids and rich kids, they get to go to the military academy or ROTC, or they get to take all of this energy and put it into the armed forces. And for a young black male, a young Puerto Rican or Hispanic person, we got to put this in the streets. That's where our energies go. That's the only place we have to put it. So that's where we end up putting it. So that's what I did. I don't feel like what I did was so evil. I just feel like the way I was living and my mentality was a part of my progression to be a man.
Diddy responded to that part of the interview with the following: "I hope that his thug life shit is really over, but on the real, if you gonna be a motherfucking thug, you got to live and die a thug, you know what I'm saying? There ain't no jumping in and out of thugism. If that's what you choose to do, you got to go out like that. I ain't no thug. Only thugs I know is dead or in jail or about to be." As far as Diddy, after Pac's death, he continued his run of hits on Bad Boy Records, even after the death of Biggie in 1997. From the Lox to Mace and plenty other artists, it has been pretty well established that Diddy's music business has been a bit shady to say the least, but over the years that would prove to be only the surface. Besides the whole setup at Quad Studios that Puff was allegedly aware of, there's a bit more to the beef that Pac and Puff had with one another. According to multiple interviews former Bad Boy bodyguard Gene Deal has had, Puff was jealous of 2Pac and wanted to copy him.
Well, I look at it this way, man, that when you go behind and you try to emulate what another man does, it's some real funny shit behind that.
One of those ways goes back to something that Pac himself said on Hit 'Em Up with the lines,
Now it's all about Versace. You copy my style. 5 shots couldn't drop me. I took it and smiled. Now I'm about to set the record straight. With my AK, I'm still the thug that you love to hate.
Now this line was aimed at Biggie mainly, you could say, but both Puff and Biggie were wearing Versace around this time, and Pac became known for wearing Versace as in 1995 he was invited to walk the runway for the 1996 Men's Fashion Week show for Versace. So Pac seeing Big and Puff wear Versace was seen as copying. Another example of Diddy copying Pac that Gene Deal gave was that Diddy wanted to get with women that Pac had been with.
Pac come out with the gold and black Versace shirt first. Puff come back out with it like that. Every girl that Pac used to date, Puff then slayed them too. Came right behind them.
One example of that is Sarah Chapman, which is another woman that 2Pac was involved with. Diddy wound up having a child with her after she was with Pac. There's also allegations that Kim Porter, who Diddy had a long off and on relationship with, was also involved with Pac at some point as well. Whether that last part is true or false, however, the fact of the matter is that these two went from being friends to enemies, and there's a reason for it. After Biggie was killed in March 1997, Diddy went on to start rapping to releasing his own solo albums to much success, with his debut album No Way Out released in July 1997 going multi-platinum, and his second album Forever released in August 1999 going platinum as well. In 1998, Diddy hosted the first of his annual white parties, which would be attended by many celebrities and executives from the industry. This is also where you could say his more recent troubles began to take root. Trouble truly follows Diddy everywhere he goes, however, if you continue to look at it. A few examples here. In April 1999, there's the incident where he assaulted Nas's then manager, Steve Stout, because of Diddy's scenes in the Hate Me Now video, in which Diddy was on a cross being crucified, which Diddy was not happy with and wanted removed from the video. Then in December that year was the infamous shooting at a club in New York, in which Diddy was there with his then girlfriend, Jennifer Lopez, and new Bad Boy Records signee, Shine. A shooting occurred and Diddy was acquitted of all charges, while Shine wound up doing 10 years in prison.
This was not someone who I vacationed with and who he and I enjoyed this great intimate relationship of brotherhood. This is someone who destroyed my life.
That's just some of the stuff that happened in the 90s that Diddy was associated with. not even counting all the allegations of domestic violence he has of Kim Porter or the rumors of him being involved with the deaths of Pac and Biggie. Despite all these situations he was involved in and even the rumored ones, Diddy continued to make money hand over fist for over 2 decades, partly due to his success in the music industry, but also how he used that as a launchpad to form other lucrative business deals like starting Sean John Clothing in 1998, the brand ambassador deal with Ciroc in 2007, and co-founding Revolt TV in 2013, among other things. He had a net worth of close to $1 billion and became one of the first rappers to reach that amazing milestone. In 2023, the liquor company Diageo, in which he had a partnership with for Ciroc, cut their ties with him, and there was a lawsuit in which Diddy claimed that the company was not marketing his liquor due to the racism because he's black. That wound up being settled in January 2024. Like I said, there's been rumors of Diddy and his misconduct, but it wasn't until November 2023 when a lawsuit by his longtime girlfriend Cassie that the public started to take more notice. In November 2023, Cassie filed a civil lawsuit against Diddy with various allegations including numerous beatings, among other things. Diddy settled the lawsuit for an undisclosed amount the next day after it was filed. One of the most surprising things to be revealed in this lawsuit is that Diddy had allegedly orchestrated for Kid Cudi's car to get blown up, apparently because Cassie had dated Cudi after Diddy. Then 2 more lawsuits were also filed against Diddy in November. This led many to believe that there was some truth to the allegations, while others felt that it was false accusations looking to make some money. And then in January 2024, an episode of Shannon Sharpe's Club Shay Shay was released, which had Cat Williams as the guest. Cat Williams made a comment during the interview about how he's turned down multiple million-dollar deals in order to protect his integrity, so to speak.
Now, I've had to turn down $50 million 4 times. 4 times, just to protect my integrity and that virgin hole I was telling you about. Right, because P. Diddy be wanting to party. And you gotta tell him no. You got to tell him no. I did.
Every other week, it seemed like some new information was making headlines. In February, producer Lil Rod made accusations of sexual assault against Diddy. That had many people claiming Diddy to be gay or bi and led to plenty of jokes regarding the situation. Then in March, Diddy's homes in LA and Miami were raided as part of an investigation into Diddy and the many accusations. However, things got even worse when in May 2024, a video was leaked of Diddy physically assaulting Cassie in a hotel. Now there was video proof of at least one of the accusers against him. This certainly helped turn some of the people who still gave him the benefit of the doubt against him. 2 days after the video leaks, Diddy posted a video on his Instagram page apologizing for the video.
I was up. I mean, I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it, I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help. I had to go into therapy, and go into rehab. Had to ask God for his mercy and grace. I'm so sorry.
The lawsuits continued on for a few months, and then on September 16th, Diddy was arrested by federal agents, and he is then charged with racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and interstate transportation for prostitution, and denied bond. Since then, he's been awaiting trial, which is set for May 2025, and several new lawsuits have been filed against him for sexual assault, also naming various corporations that have allegedly had a hand in helping Diddy in these misdeeds in some way. So yeah, there's been one thing after another with Diddy. Now, Pac might not have been talking about all this stuff when he said what he said in songs and interviews about Diddy, but one thing is for sure. Most of the people Pac really took issue with have done some pretty shady things, to say the least, whether in the industry or in the streets. Now, what are your thoughts? Was 2Pac right about these people? We've seen what happened to people like Stretch and Jimmy Henchman. What do you think will happen to Diddy? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below.